Hi there, Coach Sage Canada, sagerunning.com here with a training talk on how to not bonk or hit the wall in your marathon. A lot of people, you find you're running the marathon, the first half might be fine, the first 20 miles, the first 32K might be fine, but then you get to the last 10K or the last 15K, the last 6 to 8 miles, and you have to slow down, you have to take walk breaks, you have to stop, and you feel like you could barely finish, and your average pace slows way down in the second half, and especially in that last 6 miles or that last 10K. So these are some tips and tricks on how to avoid that. All right, so the first tip is to adjust your training accordingly. Try to evaluate what level you've trained at and what your goal finishing time is, and make sure you have the fitness to pull off the pace that you want. So for example, if you've run a 3:45 marathon and you want to try to run a 3:30, that's a really good achievable goal, to shave 15 minutes off in that time range. And you have to base it on previous training. What did you do when you ran 3:45? Are you training at a higher level? Likewise, if you haven't cracked 140 or run close to 140 for a half marathon, it's going to be really hard to put together 2 145 half marathons back to back to run that 3:30. So be honest with yourself, be honest with your fitness. Have you been running that pace, faster than that pace in training during long runs? What has your weekly mileage been up to? For a lot of people, generally, the higher the mileage, the better, the more consistent you can be with the marathon, as well as doing some long runs where you've actually run faster than marathon race pace for extended periods of time, at least 10K, maybe during a 20-mile long run. You're running 6 to 8 miles at marathon pace or faster comfortably during a 20-mile long run, or during a, 32-kilometer long run. You've worked up to that. And that's if you're running, up to about maybe 100 kilometers per week or about 60 miles per week. So the other key is going to be with race day execution, race day pacing. And ideally for distance running events, you usually want a pretty even split. That is, the first half of the race, the first 13.1 miles or the first 21K is about the same time as your second 21K or your second half of the marathon race. Now, most people don't perfectly even split the race. A lot of times you slow down by, a couple minutes, maybe you slow down 2 or 3 minutes or 5 minutes in the second half. That's okay. That's still a well-executed race. That means you probably gave it your all and you raced optimally. Because if you go out too slow and you save up too much and then you come sprinting into the finish, which is more rare in a marathon, then you probably had more left in the tank. You didn't quite reach your potential. But like most people, if you're like me and you bonk hard or you hit the wall hard in the second half of the race, your last 10K or your last 6 miles is a much, much slower pace. Maybe you start running 30 seconds per mile or a minute per mile or, 40 seconds per kilometer, 20 seconds per kilometer slower than your whole pace for the first half of the race. And that's hitting the wall hard. That's going exponential. That's slowing down a lot. And to avoid that, we need to pace ourselves at a manageable level and try not to go out too fast. Because for every second you're trying to bank seconds or bank minutes in the bank in the first half or the first 21K, you're going to pay the price probably pretty bad in the last 10K or the second half of the race, because, if you're way too fast and it feels easy, you're feeling good, it feels too easy, all of a sudden you hit the wall around mile 20 or 32 kilometers in, and all of a sudden things totally blow apart. You start walking, you start cramping up, you have sheer muscle failure, you have to slow down rapidly because you're going hypoglycemic. You're essentially bonking, running out of glycogen stores, and slowing down at a drastic rate. So to minimize the chances of doing that, you need to make sure you pace yourself in a very smart way, according to the course. If it has hills, for example, like at the Boston Marathon, it's a little bit different. You need to control yourself more on the downhills early on, and then not, totally blow the gasket on some of the uphills as well. You need to be able to adjust your pace accordingly by feel. But it's about being smart early on in the first half when things feel relatively easier, because everything comes down to that last 10K. Everything comes down to the last 6 miles. Can you run that at an even pace and not totally fade? That's going to yield your best finishing time. And I look back on my marathon PRs, it's more even paced. So maybe I slowed down a little bit in the last 10K or the last 6 miles, but it wasn't by more than 10 or 15 seconds per mile, or about 12 seconds per kilometer at the most. So it's a more even pace type of race. The final tip that goes along with this, and probably the most important, is race day nutrition, race day execution. And again, this goes with pacing. It goes with eating or taking in calories at regular intervals, because we all have about 20 miles worth or 32 kilometers worth of glycogen stored in our muscles and liver, carbohydrate stores basically, to run pretty hard for that amount. Then we're going to run out of fuel and we're going to bonk, we're going to hit the wall, we're going to go hypoglycemic, get really low blood sugar. So what I do is I take, like most people, an energy gel. This is my new gel sponsor, Spring Energy, myspringenergy.com. And it's going to give you that extra fuel to make it without hitting the wall. You want to ideally scrape up against the wall. And your brain needs a lot of fuel. Your brain runs on carbs. And that's part of hitting the wall, is you get really discouraged mentally as well. But then your muscles need the fuel. Your muscles need fuel. Carbohydrates are very effective fuel for a lot of people. And so, when I got 16th at the Boston Marathon, I took 4 gels during that race. A lot of gels are around 100 kilocalories each. And so we're looking at about, 300, 400 calories, if not 500 or 600 calories. And the other way you could get calories, of course, is through drinking sports drink, drinking electrolyte fluid that may or may not be at the race's aid stations. You want to look up, where are there fluid stations where I could get a drink, at least a drink of water to wash down my gel. I could carry these gels in my shorts pockets. I could carry 4 gels and take them at regular intervals, maybe every 5 miles or so. So I'm taking one at 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles, 20 miles. Maybe I'll have a backup gel for that last 10K in case I want another one at 22 miles. So I have this constant stream of energy. And so you're helping avoid the bonk. If you're pacing yourself well, you're taking in these calories. Same thing with hydration though. A lot of muscle failure, you get sheer muscle failure because it's such a long distance to run, but you could also get really dehydrated running a marathon, especially if it's hot out or you have a high sweat rate, you lose a lot of sodium and other electrolytes. A lot of races will have a sports drink, electrolyte drink, that you could swig along the way. Some people even carry their own handheld bottle to sip at regular intervals, but you probably want to be drinking at least about 8 ounces or a cup every hour, if not a little bit more. And it's going to depend on the weather again, your stomach issues, how long you are out there exactly, but you're going to have to be taking in some electrolytes. You're going to want to be taking in maybe some sips of water along with these gels, and that's going to help minimize your chances of bonking or really cramping up. And again, it comes down to pacing. It does come down to training, but race day execution could make or break a race. And if you don't have a gel when you need a gel, that could be the difference between slowing down rapidly in the last 5K or making it to that finish line and finishing strong with a new personal best. So those are my tips on how to avoid the wall, how not to bonk during a marathon. Thanks so much for following along. Thumbs up if you like this video. Be sure to share it across your social media channels. If you like VO2 Max Productions, be sure to subscribe here. Also, check out our running website, sagerunning.com. Sandy and I run our coaching business. We sell training plans there. We're going to have some more announcements, blog posts, podcasts on the website. Check it out. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more VO2 Max Productions.